All right, let's go to the second out. This is an interesting one because, we kind of, you and I both agreed, and we've talked about this before. We both kind of agreed that the Houston Astros, we felt, were pretty good to win the division preseason, right? Like, as much as we thought, like, the Rangers were still going to be competitive, as much as highly as we thought of the Seattle Mariners pitching, especially, Houston was going to take control of that division. They suck at the moment. They're terrible. Listen, they're at a position now where, and I think we've been kind of saying this for weeks, and I apologize, they're not in last. They are a half game out of last. They are a half game better than the Angels. So my apologies. But they sit right now at 15-25. They're not good, and their issues are not getting better, right? They have major leaguers that are really struggling. I mean, Alex Bregman is really not playing well. Even Yordan Alvarez is not having the same the season that we're used to seeing him have. I mean, this is a team that is really, really struggling at the moment. And as far as that, the Blue Jays are concerned, 18-22, last place in the AL East. The AL East looks better than maybe we thought, right? The Yankees look really good. The Orioles look really, really good. The Red Sox seem to be a little bit better than we thought, at least early on. I mean, there's a lot of it would be, in my opinion, a little bit of a steeper hill to climb for Toronto to get back up here. But what do we think, Dalton? Who do you think at this point is more likely to sell at the deadline between these two teams that we thought would definitely be better than what they are now?
It's the Blue Jays for me, and I feel pretty strongly about it. And the more I've ruminated on this the last couple of days and watched the Astros this weekend in Detroit, I've got a couple takes for you here.
Okay.
The Astros are going to win the AL West. I still think the Astros are going to win the AL West. They're 15-25, but there hasn't been any real separation created in that division.
Mm-hmm.
They're only 6.5 games out. And 6.5 games out in May is not great, but that's pretty similar to where the Dodgers and Padres are from one another right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the Padres are in second place. I just don't think they're out of it. I think they're going to be fine. And I'll tell you part of why. They're in the top of the second inning right now against the Oakland Athletics. This is the first of all 12 games with the A's left on the schedule still. They still have all 12 games with the Angels left on the schedule. They still have either 6 or 7 games with the White Sox left on their schedule. They got a lot of soft spots on that schedule that they haven't even touched.
Yeah.
That's 30 games right there that I think they win 24 of. I have a feeling the Astros, or maybe not 24, 20-24, right? I think this is an Astros team that is primed to kind of go on a tear at some point soon here. Mm-hmm. And we really shouldn't be that surprised by it. The offense, by and large, has been good. And this past weekend, Verlander shoved. Framber Valdez shoved. If they can just get Christian Javier right, you got 3 solid guys right there. They're going to get somewhat healthier as the season goes along. There's going to be some positive regression that's going to hit that staff a little bit as the season goes along. Some of these guys are too good to be this bad. So it's been a disaster so far, don't get me wrong. But I'm actually buying stock in Houston right now. It's a team that I want to buy low on. And I love that Dana Brown, their GM, as much as I don't think he's a great GM, I love that he came out and was like, sell, what are you talking about? We're a good team. I believe him. I believe him that that's actually where he stands on that team. Yeah. I think there's no way they sell. I think they're going to ride this thing till the wheels fall off, and I think they're going to buy if they're anywhere close. Yeah. So I'm kind of in on the Astros right now, as funny as it sounds, whereas Toronto, I would not be surprised at all to see them start shipping away pieces.
Yeah. I mean, I desperately want you to be wrong. I do. I hate the Astros almost more than anything in the world. So I really, really want you to be wrong.
I get it, but I'm just telling you.
No, I hear you. But and I think that I agree with you in the sense that, you know, like the Astros, if you just compare the two situations, right? You bring up a good point. If you just compare where both of these teams are and where they sit at the moment, the Astros are in better position than the Blue Jays are, right? We have more faith in the top of the American League East than we do in the top of the American League West, right? The Mariners right now are leading the AL West at 22-19. Like, they are not a world beater. The Texas Rangers are obviously very much not a world beater, right? They're 22-20. The A's is, as fun as we can have, as much fun as we can have saying, oh, the A's this, the A's that, because they're a scrappy little ball club that just doesn't seem to go away. They're 19-23. Like, they're not really a threat. I don't think, unless they have some sort of money ball type run that they've had, 20 something years ago. But I don't see that happening. It is not crazy to say that the Astros still have a shot at this division. They absolutely do. But they got to get their shit together fast. I think, like, the more time goes on, and this might be as redundant, but the more time goes on where these issues still arise, right? You and I have both expressed, our similar concerns in the respect of, we're not even worried about them hitting. They'll find it, right? If they have a lull, fine. I can get behind Yordan Alvarez finding it, Jose Altuve finding it, Alex Bregman finding it. Kyle Tucker is having a good year. We don't really even need to worry about him. And Jeremy Pena has actually had a better year than he did last year. But I mean, I am unbelievable, and I shouldn't say I'm worried, because I'm not. I hope they crash and burn. But this pitching staff is truly terrible. It's truly, truly terrible. Now, like you said, if you can find, right, if Justin Verlander can find it, okay, then I'll buy into that. Framber Valdez, yeah, I can buy into that. I've expressed my concern about this before. This is a bullpen that I don't have faith in at all. They cannot get anybody out. It is unbelievable. They can't get anybody out. Now, listen, Hader is still nasty, right? You're probably right in the sense that, like, a player that's as good as Josh Hader is going to eventually find it. I don't know that there's anybody else in that bullpen that I'm not convinced couldn't have a terrible year. I'm not convinced that Ryan Presley is going to find it this year. I'm not convinced that Brian Abreu is going to find it this year. And if you look beyond that, they have virtually no one else. Rafael Montero has been awful since he's gotten paid, right? Like, they just don't have anyone that can get anybody out. So unless they plan on buying, and I don't think it's going to take one or two bullpen pieces. They have to buy a shit ton of bullpen pieces to fix this issue. Then I think they could be in trouble. They really need to get this on track fast. So, in respect to go ahead, but yes.
Yeah, so here's the thing about that, right? The easiest thing to solve on a baseball team is the bullpen.
Yeah, right.
It's the most random part of a baseball team. Like, it's nearly impossible to predict what a bullpen's going to do year in and year out. Like, like, if we think a bullpen's going to be great, it doesn't mean it's going to be great, right?
Right.
I think that randomness can also occur within a season, and I think we're going to see some regression come back the other way for some of these guys. It doesn't have to be all of them, but a couple of them. Mm-hmm. And the fun thing about bullpens is you can fix them on the cheap. Like in 2017, when the Dodgers, made it to the World Series and played the Astros, a big part of that was Brandon Morrow, who the Dodgers picked up off the scrap heap after injuries, right? Mm. You can find guys like that to fix a bullpen as the season goes along. You don't have to spend big prospect capital to fix it.
Sure.
Like, you can go get, trying to think of some examples, right? You can go get like a Dylan Floro for like a shitty prospect.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't even know what kind of year he's having, but I use him as an example where it's just like, they don't need to go get 3 elite guys.
No.
Just go get a couple dudes that can eat innings for you here and there, and you're not that far off. So to me, it's the most fixable issue a team can have, and I think the starting pitching is already coming around to where I think the starting pitching can be average to above average. I think the bullpen can be average to below average, and they can hit the absolute shit out of the baseball and pass the Mariners who can't hit at all, and the Rangers who I still think are like a year away, even though they won the World Series last year, as weird as that is to say. So that's kind of where I stand on this. I mean, this is a team they've outscored the division-leading Mariners by 22 runs.
They can hit. They can certainly hit.
They're hitting. So, I think they're steadily going to climb, and they're not that far. Like think about it this way: if Houston has a hot week and Seattle has a cold week, we're looking at like 2 or 3 games between these teams like that. Like that's all it takes. Right. So I don't know. I'm buying stock cheap right now in Houston.
Yeah, and I don't want it to be misconstrued because I agree with you. I think that it is probably wise to have more faith in Houston right now than doubt. But like I said, I will say this. This is not something that I think like there's a deadline to that faith, right? Like they're to a point where I'm like, all right, if they don't fix this by, I said this to you, I think last time where I'm like, listen, you can't wait to solve your bullpen issues until the deadline. You can't wait till then because if it doesn't adjust until then we're going to be having a different discussion about the Astros, right? If they go from 6.5 games out to 11.5 games out, then we're having a different discussion. It is simply because they are still sort of in striking distance of this division because it is such an underwhelming top of the division right now that you're like, okay, yeah, they can still do this, but it's got to happen like now. Like if you're going to go get bullpen pieces, get them this week. like you can't afford to throw away. Like you can't lose a series to the A's, right? You can't lose a series to the Angels. You can't lose games that you're at the point now where like, all right, you've had your bad start. If it keeps getting bad, then, it just then the bullpen pieces that you do add at the deadline make less and less of a difference. So that's really where I'm coming from with this. But I agree. I think the Blue Jays at the moment are, and it's kind of interesting because like, I kind of view the Blue Jays and the Astros in a very similar light as far as like how their rosters are constructed in a way. They have like a bunch of young guys that I'm really not sure they want to dump, right? Obviously Guerrero, obviously Bichette, they're not going to trade any of those guys. But I mean, are you considering Springer? Are you considering Justin Turner? Are you considering, I will say this, and I've had this opinion since they've done it. The Dalton Varsho trade was so unbelievably awful for the Blue Jays. It blew my mind. And it's not even just because like Gabby Moreno turned out to be something in Arizona. But
Guerrero too. I mean, he's a star.
Right. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, you gave up a haul for a guy who, I mean, I'll be honest, I thought Dalton Varsho, even when he was in Arizona, was one of the more overrated players in all of baseball. Like, I just don't see it with him at all.
Yeah, I mean, he's a very, very good defender.
Sure.
And has his moments offensively. He provides some versatility in the fact that he can catch if needed, but he's not a player that you're selling off Lourdes Gurriel Jr. and Gabby Moreno in hindsight for at all, right?
No.
Because think about it this way, right? Varsho's a guy that can play the outfield or can catch. I'd rather have Gurriel than Varsho alone in the outfield. Right. And I'd rather have Moreno than Varsho alone behind the plate.
That's right. Yep.
You're giving up 2 pieces, each of which I would take individually over Varsho today. So it's a tough scene. It's a tough scene.
It really is, man. And I understood why they traded Gabby Moreno in the first place, right? Because they were good at the catcher spot, right? Alejandro Kirk and Danny Jansen are both fairly solid major league catchers. If you want to move forward with those guys, yeah, fine. But trade Gabby Moreno for a top tier starter or something. Like Gabby Moreno was a top 10 prospect in baseball when they traded him, and he's a catcher. Like I don't know. I saw that trade and I was like, oh, what in the world are they doing? But I mean, they've got pieces to sell off, man. They really do. I mean,
and I would say an old Lee Corso, not so fast, my friend, on there being no way that they trade Bichette or Guerrero. I'm just putting it out there. I would not be shocked at all if one of them moves.
Interesting. So, okay. So why do you say that? Those are their two like cornerstone pieces at the moment.
I think especially both of them are struggling,
sure.
But I think especially in the case of Guerrero, a lot of like the baseball zeitgeist has kind of soured on him. It reminds me a little bit of like the late portion of Cody Bellinger's time in LA, where it just kind of feels like, yeah, maybe we move on from this guy. Maybe we give him a change of scenery. Maybe we see what prospects we can get. I think if they fall far enough out of it, like they're going to want pieces to build that farm, and you're not going to get them for George Springer, right?
Yeah.
Like if you want to actually rebuild some pieces on that farm, you're going to have to let go of one of those guys. Unfortunately for them, the value on both of them right now has kind of been plummeting. Like they've both just been awful. I mean, Bo Bichette hitting under the Mendoza line is shocking given that guy's hit tool. Speaking of players I'd buy low on right now. But yeah, I mean, it's rough there, man.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, listen, Vladimir Guerrero's all-star each of the last 3 years. And like, he's one of those guys where I'm like, okay, if I'm going to trade Vladdy Jr., I have to get an absolute fucking haul for him. Like I would need to they would need to knock my socks off, because I think like the value in trading him would very rarely be higher than the value in keeping him. Like that's just kind of where I sit on the whole thing. So if my socks get knocked off by a trade, fine. But I don't think
he hasn't been any good for like 2 years and change now. Like, I mean, he's been okay, but like I get he's making all-star teams, but he's not like a super impactful player the last couple of years. And he doesn't play any defense. He doesn't run the bases. Like, I mean, I don't know. I'm just not like, I'm not that bought in on Guerrero in general. Like he's got 4 homers this year.
Yeah.
That doesn't work. If you're going to be him, right? Like, and you're going to play that game, you cannot be out here not hitting homers. Like, and I know that's such a reductionist way to look at it, but he's got 100 RBI season. Like I get that's a high bar, but for a guy in his position, like of his ilk, you kind of need him doing that.
Yeah.
You know, and he's like, it's just I'm just not seeing it. You know, OPS under 800 last year, OPS under 800 so far again this year. He strikes out a ton. Like I'm not seeing it. So I don't know. I'm less bought in general on him.
Well, hey, listen. I mean, I think if you were to ask most people right now, without really looking into it that deep, I think a lot of people would have called you crazy, right? When it came to maybe selling off Bichette and Guerrero, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's not.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.